All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to Great Mondays Radio. Today I have the CEO of Engagedly, Sri Chalapa. He is here to tell us all about employee engagement, how he kind of came to this, and why he's decided to invest his entire career in building a company that is all about employee engagement. Sri, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you coming on Great Mondays.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I love the title Great Mondays. It's what I want everyone to look for.
That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do here. So Sri, you are, now a CEO of this company. It's been around for a number of years now, but that's not where you started. You've done a bunch of other things. You have a bunch of experience. Um, when in your career, early on, maybe where you realized that culture was like, kind of hit you on the forehead, like, oh my gosh, actually, this is something that's really important.
It was early on, but I didn't necessarily put the word culture to it, right? Like, why do I like working here and why did I not like working somewhere else, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, and it was not because of one specific manager either. It was across the board. There was a different feeling, you just felt better about working there. One of my first jobs, I did like working there somewhat, but it didn't really challenge me, so I quit and went to work for Ernst and Young, which is a back in the day, it was both auditing and consulting.
Yeah.
And really, the culture there really resonated with me. It was very ambitious, uh, culture that supported people, supported each other. And there was a partnership still back then. I think it's still a partnership, I guess. And the partners really treated their people like family, to some extent. And I'm obviously using the family quote unquote here because you do get fired if you don't perform. People don't fire family members. But that being said, it was a very different mindset at that point. And then at some point, there was a transition where it some of the business units got spun off and was bought by another consulting company. I'm not going to name that consulting company to protect the in a sense,
I'm
if you will.
sure we can do some internet research if you're really
But
motivated.
I could see pretty much overnight, within a few weeks, if you will, at the latest, that it was a different culture. People
Huh.
were not excited about working there. People were not excited about some of the communication coming from the management. People were wondering if they had a career here anymore. And you saw a lot of exodus in the process, So that was the first time I realized it does matter, because now I went from an okay culture to a great culture to not so great culture again, and I could really see the transition of how people felt and how I felt, to be honest.
In a short time frame, right? Like it compresses that. It amplifies that experience, right?
Yeah.
If you're saying it happened within a few weeks, that's crazy. There's this saying that it takes years to build a brand, but only a moment to destroy it. And that it I don't know that I applied that to culture, but until you just said that, I think that's probably true. Like culture has an inertia and it takes a lot to build something that really works. But if can you give us do you have an observation, like why did it change? Like this, that was the same group of people, they got acquired, but now they were under different leadership. It was like someone just went in and be like, all right, peasants, work harder. Like what happened that changed that?
We Ernst and Young had a reputation, right, of being a very strong group of people who worked hard. If you worked hard, you got promoted, and some of it was also up or out type of mentality as well. So you either get promoted and you do well
Yep.
over your
Yep.
career, or you move out to go to the industry. It appeals to a certain group of people. It certainly appealed to me. The other one felt like a job. You were just doing a job, and you were
Mm.
treated like a job person doing a job. The investment in mentoring and coaching and growth was just not quite there, from people. I mean, I say investment, I don't necessarily mean sending me to some training, right? Or conducting some large classroom trainings or providing access to, LinkedIn Learning or things like that. It was just, there was no investment from the management to coach the people below them so that they can rise above, so it's almost felt like people lost agency in their own careers. And when you get that feeling, you're getting paid the same, if not sometimes, you could get paid more. Some of them got paid more. We got a similar bonus structure. The 401k plans are the same. We had the same managers for the most part, right? But it just felt different, because it was like, this is not the same culture and mindset that we had in the past. And I think you can put a number on it, but if you did a poll, you clearly see the results. There was a company I was talking to a few weeks back where something changed in the market, in the SaaS world. SaaS world is going through some kind of a seismic shift right now, in terms of how some SaaS companies are doing. There's layoffs, things like that. The people are the same, and they went from an 85 score on employee engagement to a 35 or 37. I can't remember the exact number.
Holy,
But it was
that's
a massive
crazy.
shift in just 1 year when they did the survey again. Same people, same CEO, something changed in there. Now layoffs do happen, right? Layoffs are happening at Microsoft, happened at Google.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to see that kind of a shift unless there's a significant shift in the middle level in how their management is communicating, how the people are feeling about their own careers and growth. So those are some of the things really that can resonate and reverberate, and it's hard to fix it once it goes down.
It's really hard. It's really hard to fix once it's not impossible, but it takes a lot of energy and effort. When it strikes me, when you're talking about Ernst and Young, it's like, what you're going to get. It's very clearly laid out. And that, I think big consulting groups like that are very clear about what they expect. And clearly that worked for you, right? That attracted you. You're motivated to do that. So one of the traits, right? You want people that are motivated, but they're also interested in their own growth. You talk about this up or out. And so when one of the points that you're just making there about, well, there was no path, there was no investment in, and it wasn't even the money. It was just that you're aware that that the managers or leaders don't even see that as a valuable thing. And when that happens, then you have that engagement drops. It's like, oh, they are not aware of what I'm looking for, and that's particularly acute. You're coming from this place that had a very clear culture, and then it became not. So it was really the error was on them, because they didn't see that. It's like the kind of people and what they cared about, what they wanted, right? They didn't want more flex time. They wanted more ability to grow.
Yes. There's the funny part, right? There are people, it depends on, at the end of the day, I talk about this a lot about even about our product and our solution. It's really about creating better alignment between management and people. And most culture issues happen when there's misalignment between the two. And clearly this was a misalignment because the people wanted something, management wanted something else, and they never could align, at least not in the time period I was there, on the right alignment of what the people wanted and what the management or the leadership, I should say, wanted out of it. And when you have getting people from a company or organization that is really ambitious, driven, they're not afraid to work on Sunday nights, Saturday nights if they need to get things done. Not everyone is built from the mold. Some people like that about their young, at least when they're in their younger years, they do like that because they want to progress in their careers. And then there are a group of people who want to say, like, it's 4 o'clock on Friday, it's time, I'm leaving, or it's 5 o'clock on a Monday, I need to leave, right? There's that kind of people, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. That's just the cohort you're working with. Now, if you try to fit this cohort into that type of mindset, I'm not saying the other company was like that, but I'm just giving an example here. It's going to be a culture clash. It's going to be a culture mix-match. Then some people think, hey, these guys are really aggressive. The other person might think these people are just slacking off. They're not really pulling weight. and that kind of issue can happen. So people, and this is especially true with M&A, right? When you do M&A, if you get people from varying culture, where you get somebody who's totally, like a family-run business, and then you merge them into a fast-growing SaaS company
Yeah.
or a fast-growing startup, which has a very much like burn the candle on both end type of mindset, it's not going to work. There's just different mindset there.
How so many good questions. I'm really kind of resonating with this construct of alignment or misalignment between leadership and employees. So how an organization of 500 or 5,000 people, those employees are going to need, they're going to want all different things. How does a leader, right? So if, the people that listen to this podcast, they're usually managers or leaders in some capacity. So how do they get a sense of what it is that people want? What kind of questions could they ask that might, it's like there's certain things that I want. I want kombucha in the middle of the day, but that doesn't mean like I'm going to get it and then I'm going to leave because I don't get that.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So what is it that I'm asking? What kind of things are we looking for when we're trying to figure out who the employee population is and what's going to matter to them?
That's a very difficult question. Obviously, you can run engagement surveys, but engagement surveys really about perception, not always about reality. I have my own skepticism about engagement surveys to some extent. I mean, it gives you some semblance of engagement, but it is not a true reflection of engagement. I think the best way to do that is to really have these sidebar conversations. Let's say you have a team event or you do a conference, you all go together, maybe on a side when you're having a coffee or taking a walk, or you're playing, maybe you go for a run together or something like that. You have these conversations with people that are 1 or 2 levels removed from you, right? And that's how you get these conversations, because you get them talking. Now, the management can hear what people are saying, but are they actually listening to what people are saying? Because what listening means, reading between the lines on what they actually mean when they say something, and behaviors are more indicative than words. So if you see a behavior of people not always showing up for a meeting, or they're not responding to your emails on time, or if they have if they have repeated issues from a customer because somebody's not responding to the customer, things like that, those are behaviors that you can get some grasp on, and people should, instead of scolding them, you should have a conversation like, what's really going on here? What is the driver behind it? And you can get a sense from the words they use and the body language on what's really could be driving those behaviors. And I think if you do that enough across multiple people across different regions, you'll get a good sense. And that means you got to step out of your office, step out of your ivory tower, and take a walk and talk to people. Obviously, it's much harder in a hybrid environment, which will require you to, actually have one-on-one conversation. Maybe even like do an agenda-less conversation. Just check in on how things are going. Ask about their family, their overall life in general, things like that, which they will reveal. And that requires, this is an important one here, that this requires that you create a culture of psychological safety. Because if the employee feels that whatever they say could be used and has been used in the past against them, they're gonna be telling you what you want to hear and not what they really feel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, this human to human, what's going on, and hopefully you're right. I mean, if there's something that's repeated issues, that is essentially flagging disengagement, and you better get in there quick and ask what's going on, because otherwise that person is, either going to, continue to do that, or they're going to leave. And maybe could be something that you want to make sure that they're able to, you can make them, it's better to turn someone around that's already inside the company. I would, I would suggest, right? I mean, obviously if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. But what we're really talking about is sussing out what kind of people do we want, and what kind of people do we have, or what kind of culture do we want, right? Burn the candle at both ends, or work-life balance. What kind of behaviors are we looking for from people, and then how do we get those people in? And again, I think it's like I knew exactly what you were going to say when you said you worked at Ernst and Young's. Like, yeah, of course. Like that's the kind of person that it articulates. And I feel like that's success. Like if you're able to articulate and people have a sense of what your, what your culture is like in the market, then you're going to have people show up. So that becomes this, if we've identified, right? So step one is what kind of culture do we want? Step two is articulating that to our people in the market.
Yes, yes, and then letting the people articulate that, advocate for that, right? You know what the culture of, let's say, a BCG is, or a McKinsey is, or IBM is, or some other organization. I'm not going to start naming names, but not because they're saying something. It's because their people are saying something. It's
Right.
because the recruiters are saying something. Outside recruiters, I'm not talking about inside recruiters. Inside recruiters will say all the things you want to hear. But the outside recruiters, what are they saying? What are the ex-employees saying about that company? Because
Mm,
ex-employees will actually give you a lot more insight. You know the culture of, let's say, Facebook or Google from talking to the ex-employees of Google and Facebook, or
right.
ex-employees of Salesforce, or
Right.
ex-employees of GM and things like that. So your people are going to be your brand ambassadors, positive or negative, whether they're in the company or outside the company as well. So when people leave, make sure they're leaving on amicable terms,
Yeah.
because they're gonna destroy your culture in the workplace market out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do, one of the things that I try to do is help organizations articulate what their culture is so they can attract the right people. But there's like the advertisement of it, quote unquote, and then there's the actual experience of that, right? Where you're like, oh, don't use that product, or you should definitely try it. And so to me, there's always, it is wise if you're gonna work at a company to talk. They're like, oh, who do you want to talk to, right? Like talk to a few people internally. But it sounds like you're advocating for identifying and maybe trying to chat up some people who used to work there. And it doesn't, and just because you've left doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not that's not the only reason people leave. So I don't think that you're biasing necessarily, right? Everybody who is an ex-employee is going to think negatively. No, I don't think that's true at all.
No, it's not true at all. Yeah, so that's why it is good to, you know when they leave, think of them as still as brand ambassadors. They're still your
Yeah,
brand ambassador.
they
So,
are.
so don't treat them shabbily when they're leaving. Whether it's for performance or whether they're leaving you high and dry in the middle of a major project that you're on.
Yeah.
Even then, right? It's a choice. Ultimately, it's a you know it, in the US we have right to leave our work any we want, right? And
Right,
companies
right.
fire somebody for any reason for the most part.
Yeah.
So it is a completely voluntary arrangement. So I think you just need to accept it and try to make it work.
One of there's interesting terms. So, what you and I are talking about now are exit interviews, right? That's really smart to do, gather this information. But I'm also hearing people talk about stay interviews,
Right.
right? And that to me, it almost feels like what you're describing, this informal, let's sit down, let me hear what's going well, let me hear what's not going well. And that is going to be more valuable, and help you understand why people are or are not engaged earlier on, right? Don't wait for those flags to show up.
Yes. Yeah, and I think ultimately, whether it's your customer or your employee or your spouse or your kids, it's the constructs are very similar. They just want to know that you care about them, you give them some level of agency, and you are, they matter to you.
They matter.
They matter, their work matters. So I think those things are not, they don't cost money, they just cost your attention a little bit, and some
Right.
and intentionality on your part to do it right. And I've been on the wrong end of that equation before, and I have learned from my own experiences, and I think that those are some of the things I take forward with, whether it's a employee that is 2 3 levels down from me, or whether it is my peer or anyone else in that, for that matter.
Yeah. How do you how do you make the time for that? Those kind of, I mean, it feels more and more important, but less and less likely that managers have the time to sit down and have those one-on-ones, because that is the opportunity, not just to gather information, but like you said, to demonstrate that I see you. And that is infinitely more valuable than a coffee card or a pat on the
Yes.
back.
Yes, the thing is, you learn when you talk to people, they will share some of the things they like to do. Somebody likes to run, or somebody is training for a marathon, or somebody likes to play pickleball, or somebody likes to um, work out at the gym, or somebody likes to shoot for photographs for photography for fun, and things like that.
Yeah.
They will drop that somewhere in your
Yeah.
conversation at some point. You just have to remember those things to ask them, because that will light them up and they want to talk about that. Keep talking about them. Hey, where are you on your KPIs? Why didn't you hit your number? Or when are we going to release this? That's not how you build a connection.
No, that's right.
Now, these are not necessarily making time. It's just intentionality. Now, that is still requires your brain to actually shift from work mode to this mode of, hey, I have not asked this person. He's been trying to, let's say, I'm just making an example, he's been trying to lose weight by going on this intermittent fasting or whatever that is. Maybe they mentioned that on a now obviously psychological safety is important for them to even talk about that stuff. Maybe you ask them, hey, how that's going, and I learned about this, and I'll send them a link to some podcast to listen to about that, right? So there are things like that makes those connections, and they're like, I matter here. Now somewhere else, they could care less about whether you're, doing intermittent fasting, or you're doing photography, or you love your dog, or whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I feel like we're going reverse order of the employee experience, because what I'm now thinking about is some stories about when you onboard a new employee, ask them all the questions, right? Like, so at the very least, their birthday, right? You have their information, and then ask how they like to be celebrated. Ask what's important to them. And that you just have to create that form, and then someone just has to read that and pay attention. And as a manager, you're like, oh, this is important to them. And you can learn a lot. And then when you remember it, it becomes the I'm seeing you moment. Hey, you matter to me.
Yes.
And now we're talking, you're absolutely right. This doesn't cost anything.
I mean, it does cost your mental mind share. So if you're too busy to do that, give it to your assistant, or your somebody that can remind you to do that.
Not if it's your spouse, though.
Your boss, no, that you can. Well, you could probably still ask your assistant to remind you of that, but she shouldn't find out.
That's right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So you obviously, like I said at the beginning, you've invested in creating this entire platform around engagement. What was that like? Why did you decide to do this? There's a lot of other maybe easier software platforms to create value. I mean, I know there's a lot of culture-based software platforms, and they're out there, and I haven't seen any that nail it yet. And so this is a hard problem. This is a real big problem to solve. And I'm pleased that you and others are trying to with software. Why did you decide that this is where you wanted to go? I mean, does it go back to that Ernst & Young experience?
Yeah, it was exactly because of that experience I had, right? When I was at EY and we were consulting, and it was very common for clients to poach the good consultants into their company, right? And I got at least 2 or 3 job offers while I was consulting. Obviously, they had non-compete, so there were ways to get around it. There's always ways to get around it. And I could not see myself working in any of my client companies that I consulted for. And these are big Fortune 500 publicly traded companies.
Yeah.
Right. And then I became a partner in a different IT services startup that we grew to 3,000 people, and that was a great experience, right? Because growing a startup to a 3,000 employee organization was a pretty nice journey. But in that process, I worked with lots of clients, hundreds of clients in different capacities, and a lot of these places, I felt like there was a disengagement problem, there was an attrition problem, they always had trouble keeping good people. And it was from these experiences, when I was talking to my partner, Jay, he had this idea for engagement software that drives better engagement by building communities at workplace. And it was based on these premise that people like to work where they have friends. People like to work where they feel they're being heard. People like to work where they're being recognized. People like to work where their expectations are being clearly communicated. So you're not always changing the goalposts on them, right? Things like that. And so we said, what if we solve for those specific items in a software, we can build a better culture. Now, you can build a tool, but the person has to know how to use the tool effectively and should have the time and the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
So why a lot of the software don't succeed is because of in many other ways, is many of the reasons is because of the hand that's using the tool. HR historically has been underfunded in most organizations. And then it becomes HR's role to implement this tool when really this is a business function. It should be coming from the CEO and the COO and the VP of Ops.
Sounds like we're on parallel paths here, right? Like, hey, wake up, everybody! Culture engagement is an executive level scope of work that needs to be paid attention to. It's not just something that you can say some HR business partner can do off the side of their desk, right? That we're well beyond that now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is still true or not, but in many organizations, HR has a KPI of improving engagement, like it's in their control, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's in the control of the management and the operations leaders and the managers below them, HR can only put some processes, but they can force them. And so it really has to come from the leadership to drive this.
I think it comes back to the modeling of the human behavior from the top down. I mean, it can, I definitely have had multiple conversations with folks where it's like, well, if my leaders aren't doing it, can my managers do it? So it's not just the top down. It can be from the middle out. It can be, it's something that employees from the bottom up need to take responsibility for. But ultimately, it's going to be a lot harder if you don't have the humans at the top of the food chain who everybody look to and see as successful, modeling that kind of care and attention and identification of these priorities. Now, I understand that CEOs, COOs, they have so many things they have to pay attention to, but it flummoxes me when it's like culture is a thing over there. And to me, it's like, I want more and more. I want people to realize, I want executives to realize, hey, this is the job. This is the job of the CEO, is really to be able to empower their people to do their best work. And what that looks like is it starts with who they are.
100%. I talk about this all the time. If you want to improve your culture, look at yourself in the mirror to the CEO. That's where the culture starts. You can say all the words from a Harvard Business Review magazine, not going to make diddly squat of a difference unless you change from within, inside out, and then project that out, right? I think that is how you drive culture.
Yep.
Not by implementing Engagely and let Engagely fix your culture. Or
that's right.
HR.
It's just a tool. It's just another tool. I have a pencil, right? It's just another tool. The phone is just another tool. You can use it well or you can not use it well. And I think that's really important. Be the culture change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. That's a new Gandhian word, right?
Gandhi and Josh. Yeah. All right. Sri Chellappa, CEO of Engagedly. You can find out more about his platform at engagedly.com. I really appreciate you coming on. I think this was a really, really interesting conversation about alignment. I'm already thinking about kind of all the knock-on effects of some of the realizations that I had here. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with me and all my audience here.
Well, thanks, Josh. It's been a pleasure.